Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I wasn't supposed to hear it, not the way I did. Not so clearly. We were sitting at a long dinner table in her friend Simone's house, a sleek, modern place that always smelled like some kind of expensive candle. It was supposed to be a friendly get-together, a couple's night. I knew most of the people there only through her colleagues, her Pilates buddy, Simone's husband. We were seated apart because of the table layout, and I found myself wedged between two near strangers talking about cryptocurrency and hiking. Halfway through dinner, I saw her refill her glass. That slow, deliberate pour that meant she was moving from relaxed to reckless. The wine emboldened her, always had. She tilted her head, laughing at something, then said it loud enough that half the table heard. Honestly, he's kind of a failure in bed. There was a pause in the conversation around her, one of those quick stutters in the air when people aren't sure if they're meant to laugh. Then Simone gave a light chuckle, more out of discomfort than amusement. One of the men raised his eyebrows, smirked, and looked away. My wife just kept smiling. I didn't react, not outwardly. I kept my eyes on my plate, my fork slowly twirling the roasted vegetables she insisted we bring. Inside, though, something snapped. It wasn't the first time she'd made a comment like that, not exactly. But it was the first time she did it in public, said it like it was a fact, like discussing the weather. She didn't look at me when she said it, didn't even glance in my direction to see if I'd heard. That made it worse. I studied her from across the table. She looked animated, self-assured, almost glowing in her element. Her tone carried the casual cruelty of someone who had grown used to mocking someone they no longer feared losing. I pushed back my chair quietly and excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of needing more water. As I stood at the sink, staring at my reflection in the darkened window, I thought about the past year. The way she rolled away from me at night, always claiming to be tired. How she offered obligatory kisses goodbye, cold and flat. I thought about all the effort I'd put in, learning what she liked, trying to adapt, asking questions she never answered. I wasn't perfect. I knew that. But I had never disrespected her. What kind of person sits at a table with friends and says something so intimate, so degrading, without a trace of shame? I stood there until the thrum of conversation had covered the sting of her comment, and then I returned, face composed, movements measured. I took my seat again, smiling at a joke someone made, sipping water like my world hadn't just tilted beneath me. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. The rest of the dinner blurred. There were desserts passed around, a few stories swapped about travel and work. People laughed and took photos. I participated just enough to blend in, but the words kept replaying in my mind. Every glance that followed. When we got home, she was in a chipper mood, as if the night had gone exactly as planned. She kicked off her heels and padded barefoot into the kitchen, opening the fridge like nothing had happened. "Did you have fun?" she asked over her shoulder, rummaging for a late-night snack. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her. For a second, I considered asking her what she meant at dinner. If she'd meant it as a joke, it was funny. I just smiled, because in that moment, something inside me shifted completely. It wasn't humiliation. It was clarity. She wanted a reaction loud, emotional. Something she could twist into "you're overreacting" or "it's just a joke." But I wasn't going to give her that. No raised voice. No sulking. Just silence. Cold, deliberate silence. And she learned soon enough how loud silence could be. The next morning, I made her coffee like I usually did. Set it by her seat, toast just the way she liked it, lightly browned with a thin layer of almond butter. She came down yawning, oblivious to the knot forming inside me. "Thanks, babe," she said, pecking my cheek like nothing was wrong. I nodded, took a sip of my own coffee, and stared out the window at the gray sky beyond the trees. The silence was never announced. It didn't arrive with dramatic declarations or cold shoulders. It settled in like a quiet fog, slow, unnoticed at first, but soon so thick it was hard to see through. I didn't withdraw all at once. That would have been obvious. Instead, I let the small rituals dissolve one by one. The shared morning crossword she liked? I left it folded and untouched on the counter. Our Saturday morning routine of grabbing coffee at that overpriced little cafe she adored? I said I had errands, then didn't go. At first, she didn't comment. Maybe she thought I was moody, that I'd bounce back. That I was sulking, waiting to be soothed. She was wrong. That night after the dinner, she fell asleep easily, sprawled across the bed like someone utterly at peace. I lay there for hours beside her, the word failure echoing in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull like a ricochet. Because she had said it as if it was. As if she had convinced herself of it. I thought about all the nights I'd spent trying to bridge the growing distance between us. The quiet touches she pulled away from. The attempts to ask her what was wrong, always dismissed with, "I'm just tired," or "You're overthinking." I thought about how I had stopped bringing up intimacy altogether because I was tired of being made to feel like asking for love was a character flaw. It wasn't about sex. Not really. It was about being desired. Respected. She had turned me into a ghost and then mocked the hollowness she created. Over the next week, I watched her more than I spoke. She laughed at her phone more than at anything I said. At meals, she talked about her friends' vacations, her boss's new girlfriend, a TikTok she thought was hilarious. But never about us. Never about the space forming like a canyon between us. And I didn't try to close it anymore. She started noticing little things. I can see it in the way her eyes flicked toward me when I skipped watching our usual show and stayed in the study instead. Or how her smile faltered when I didn't respond to her sarcastic jokes the way I used to. It unnerved her, I could tell. But still, she said nothing. One evening, we were out for dinner again, just the two of us this time. She had suggested it midweek, probably sensing the atmosphere at home had cooled several degrees. I agreed with a smile and let her think it was reconciliation. We sat across from each other in a dimly lit Italian place. She wore the dress I had once said made her look like summer itself. She used to wear it to draw a smile from me. That night, I didn't comment. I just told the waiter my order and stared at the candle's flickering flame. She tried to pull me into conversation. Light things, safe things. But my responses were brief, polite. I was just distant. Like a man trying to remember the exact moment a bridge collapsed beneath his feet. Finally, she asked, "Is something going on with you?" I looked up, met her eyes, and said, "Why do you ask?" She hesitated. "You've been different. Quiet." I nodded slowly. "Maybe I'm just listening more carefully." Her brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of confusion behind her polished exterior. She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. But she didn't press further. That was the thing with her. She liked things neat, pleasant, easily swept under a rug. Conflict was an inconvenience, not a tool for growth. We finished the meal in awkward silence, broken only by clinking cutlery and murmured thank yous to the waiter. Later, as we drove home, she scrolled through her phone in the passenger seat, the screen's glow lighting up her unreadable expression. I kept my hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, thoughts far ahead. That night, I didn't touch her, didn't murmur goodnight. I lay on my side, staring into the dark, and felt a strange kind of peace. Not happiness. She didn't say anything the next morning, but she lingered in bed a little longer, watched me a little too closely as I buttoned my shirt. Her silence mirrored mine now, but where mine was deliberate, hers was uncertain. Over the next few days, I made a conscious decision to remove my presence piece by piece. I stopped reminding her of her dentist appointment, didn't bring her the mail she usually ignored. I no longer bought the oat milk she preferred over regular. When she mentioned it, I simply said, "You can grab it next time you're out." These were minor things. But the shift was seismic. She had built her comfort around my effort, my attentiveness. Now, she had to rely on her own. And she didn't like it. By the end of the second week, the silence had stopped being a phase to her. It had become a mirror, one that reflected a version of herself she didn't know how to manage. Not without my steadying hand beneath her chaos. I saw the questions forming behind her eyes, the tension in her movements. She was beginning to realize that something had changed. She just didn't know how much. By the third week, I no longer had to pretend. The emotional distance between us had become my new reality. I woke up early, left for work before she stirred, and returned home late enough to avoid long conversations. I answered when spoken to, made polite observations, even offered the occasional nod when she made an effort to talk, but the warmth was gone. I had pulled it back like a tide. She began trying in strange ways. Not words of affection, just a series of small corrections, as if tidying the house might reset whatever she had broken. The kitchen suddenly stayed clean, her phone stayed face down, and she started dressing up again, even on nights we had no plans. But it was all surface. She hadn't asked why I was distant. Not really. She hadn't acknowledged what she said, or the way her words had cracked something inside me that couldn't be taped back together with chores and makeup. I gave her exactly what she had pretended we were for months, a functional roommate. Bills were paid. Groceries were bought. Dishes were done. But the man she used to know, who brought her coffee in bed, who surprised her with flowers for no reason, who listened closely to the stories she repeated, was no longer available. And for the first time, she was starting to notice how much he had actually done. I could see the cracks forming behind her eyes. She tried to re-engage the routines that used to anchor us, inviting me to watch a show together, mentioning an old vacation spot we used to love. I responded with civility, not cruelty. I wasn't trying to punish her. That would require effort I no longer wanted to spend. The silence between us had evolved. It was no longer empty. It had become a presence, something we both felt sitting across the room from us like a third party. A silent guest at every dinner. A companion to every car ride. Then came the shift. One morning, she brought it up, finally. She stood in the doorway as I adjusted my tie, her arms crossed tightly over her chest like she was bracing for impact. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. I didn't turn. "No. You've been different." I kept adjusting the knot, calmly. "People change." That's not an answer. It's not a lie either. Her sigh was sharp, impatient. "I don't understand what I did." That almost made me laugh. Because it was pathetic. I turned then, slowly, and looked at her. She was searching my face, looking for some sign of emotion. Anger, sadness, anything. But I had nothing left to offer her. "You don't remember what you said at Simone's?" I asked, my voice soft, controlled. She blinked. "What?" "Over dinner. About me. To your friends." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I saw the moment the memory clicked into place. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, forcing a smile. "That was a joke. Everyone laughs at those things. Couples tease." I nodded slowly. "Sure. But they usually wait until their partner's out of earshot. Or they say it with love. You're being sensitive." "There it is," I whispered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I was waiting to see how you'd respond. You could have said you were sorry. You could have admitted it crossed a line. But instead, you doubled down. I didn't think it would hurt you." I smiled then, because the honesty was refreshing. She hadn't thought. That much was clear. "You didn't think," I repeated, tightening the last loop of my tie. "That's the problem." She didn't reply, just stood there, arms still crossed, expression caught between confusion and defensiveness. That was the last serious conversation we had for a while. From then on, she began to unravel. She checked my texts more often, asked why I was out late when I worked overtime. She started hinting at weekends away, suggesting we reconnect, with forced enthusiasm. What she didn't realize was that I had already begun preparing for the future, one where I no longer had to pretend. I started separating bank accounts. No sudden moves. I consulted a lawyer. Nothing aggressive, just preliminary questions. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. Space from the woman who had mistaken cruelty for humor and thought intimacy was something owed, not nurtured. I began sleeping on the far edge of the bed, leaving early and coming home even later. Her eyes followed me more now, like she was trying to decipher a language she had once spoken fluently. But I wasn't giving her subtitles anymore. She started calling my name more often, saying good night, even when I was already half asleep. She cooked again, played songs she knew I liked, letting them drift softly through the house. It was all so transparent I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered how easily she'd laughed that night. It was a Wednesday when she finally broke. A quiet evening, like most had become. I'd just come home from work. I didn't bother to loosen my tie, just sat down on the armrest of the couch and began scrolling through emails, sorting through client messages that felt more urgent than anything in my own house. She was already there, sitting cross-legged with a glass of red wine in one hand and her phone in the other, but her focus wasn't on the screen. It was on me. "You're punishing me," she said, not looking up. The words came out flat, like she had rehearsed them in her head all afternoon and couldn't quite summon the courage to dress them up. I didn't reply right away. I finished reading the last sentence of a contract draft, then looked up. "No," I said. "I'm adjusting." "Adjusting? To a new reality." She scoffed. "Which is what, exactly? That we don't speak unless it's about the bills? That you barely look at me unless I force you to?" I shrugged. "That's not entirely true. I'm looking at you now. You know what I mean." I put my phone down slowly, deliberately, then leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees. "Do you know what you meant that night?" Her expression faltered. Just for a second. Then came the defensiveness. "I already told you." "That it was a joke? That I overreacted? That everyone laughs at that kind of thing?" She didn't answer. Just watched me, trying to decide how honest she should be. So I made it easier for her. "You humiliated me," I said, calmly. "You didn't just hurt my pride. You confirmed something that had probably been building in your head for months, And you said it out loud in front of people. People who now look at me differently. Who probably whispered about it afterward. And the worst part is, you didn't care. I didn't mean to make it public. You meant to make it real. She set the wine glass down too hard. It wobbled dangerously but didn't spill. So what? You've just been silently resenting me for weeks? Freezing me out? I shook my head. Not resenting. Accepting. Accepting what? That I've outgrown this version of us. She flinched at that, not visibly, but emotionally. I saw it in the way her jaw tightened, how she blinked more than necessary. You don't get to rewrite our marriage because of one stupid comment. No, I agreed. But I get to decide when I've had enough. That stopped her cold. We sat in that thick silence again, the same kind that had become our default. Only now, it felt charged, like something was finally about to give. She folded her arms, not out of anger this time, but uncertainty. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm not interested in repairing something you refuse to admit is broken. I never said that, eh? You never said anything, I cut in, still calm. You carried on like nothing happened. Like I was supposed to absorb the insult and keep performing the role you cast me in, dutiful, forgiving. I stood up then. For years, I've tried to understand you, support you, make you feel seen. But when the moment came to protect my dignity, you laughed. Her face had turned pale, and for once, she didn't have a clever retort. Just silence. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm not hurt. I'm done. I walked past her, headed toward the stairs. I didn't slam doors. Because she already knew. She stayed downstairs for a long time that night. I heard the creak of the floorboards, the occasional shifting on the couch, even the quiet pop of the wine bottle being opened again. She was unraveling, piece by piece, without the distraction of my attention to anchor her. The next morning, she was at the table before me, eyes swollen, but no makeup. She was waiting. I poured my coffee in silence. Sat down. Took a sip. I get it, she said. Get what? You're leaving me. I looked at her, then set my mug down. No, not yet. Her brows knit together in confusion. Then what? I'm letting it end. On its own weight. Her lip trembled, but she forced composure. So that's it? You're just going to pretend we're strangers in the same house? No, I said. I'm going to make peace with the stranger who already lives here. She looked down then, hands trembling just slightly in her lap. This isn't what I wanted. Neither was being reduced to a punchline. For the next few days, she didn't try as hard. The carefully cooked meal stopped. She retreated inward, like someone grieving something not quite gone but already lost. I just wanted freedom. From who I had become with her. And now that I'd found the path, I wasn't turning back. She needed the drought, the long, dry silence that follows when something once lush has been allowed to die slowly, from the roots up. 2 more weeks passed. We spoke, but only about logistics, schedules, mail, the dog's vaccination. She didn't ask for anything deeper. I think she sensed the answer before she could bear to hear it. Some nights she stayed in bed after I got up, feigning sleep. Some mornings, she got up first and kept to the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. It was as if we had both signed an invisible contract, this slow separation disguised as routine. The final catalyst came in the form of a letter. Not to her. To me. From a company on the other side of the country, an opportunity one hadn't planned to pursue but couldn't ignore once it landed on my desk. A leadership role. A full reset. I printed the offer out, folded it carefully, and placed it on the dining table where I knew she'd see it. That night, she found me on the back deck, staring at the moonlit sky. She held the paper like it had insulted her directly. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. I nodded. The role's perfect. They need someone in 2 months. She stood there in silence, staring at the horizon like she could see the city I was heading to, even though it was thousands of miles away. Finally, she sat down across from me, folding her arms tightly across her chest like armor. So that's it. No, that's just the next step. She laughed once, dry, bitter. You really think you can just walk away from everything we built? Built. I repeated, more curious than angry. You don't get to call it that now. She looked away. We had good years. We had early years, I corrected. Before contempt crept in. Before I became something for you to manage, not love. She didn't deny it. Just stared at the railing, her fingers twitching like she wanted to grab hold of something that wasn't there. I didn't think it would matter that much, she finally said. So quiet I almost missed it. But it did, I said. It mattered more than you'll ever understand. I was trying to be funny. I didn't mean. You meant it enough to say it in front of people. You meant it enough to let them laugh. She stood up suddenly, unable to sit still anymore, pacing in tight circles, like the truth had electrified her feet. I've tried, okay? I've tried since then. I've apologized. No, I cut in gently. You tried to reverse the consequences. That's different. She looked at me then, really looked. The way someone stares when they realize the ground beneath them is no longer stable. So this is the part where you punish me? I shook my head. This is the part where I leave the prison I didn't know I was in. The silence between us this time wasn't tense. It was exhausted. She had no more protests. No more attempts to reframe it as a misunderstanding. Because she understood now. That night, she didn't follow me to bed. I heard her move around the house for hours, closing drawers, opening cabinets, pacing down the hallway. But I didn't get up. I didn't ask what she was doing. She was learning what real loss sounded like. It wasn't slammed doors or shouted accusations. It was the sound of someone who used to fight for you choosing, instead, to walk away quietly. Over the next few days, I began preparing. Sorting through files, closing joint accounts, packing discreetly. She just watched, haunted, resigned. One morning, she broke the silence at breakfast. I never thought it would be you who left. I didn't look up from my coffee. Neither did I. But then again, I never thought I'd be sleeping beside someone who could ridicule me like that and still ask for my loyalty. She looked down. Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. Do you still love me? I let the question hang there for a moment, then answered it honestly. I think I love the idea of who we could have been. The woman who used to light up when I walked into a room. The one who whispered that she felt safe beside me. But that version of you disappeared a long time ago. And I kept loving a memory, not a person. When I finally closed the door behind me for the last time, there were no dramatics. Just her sitting at the dining table, staring down at an untouched cup of coffee. I stepped outside into the early morning light, breathing in air that suddenly felt sharper, freer. I didn't feel regret, only relief. She had mocked me once, thought she could shrink me with a single sentence. But in the end, she learned the truth. It wasn't the words that destroyed us. It was what came after, and the man who never returned.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.